How's it going, everybody? We doing good? Day one of Gear Fest, man. I'm curious about something. Who has seen me do a performance slash clinic slash workshop here at Gear Fest before? Okay. That feels like about 1/4, 1/5 of you. So I hope you guys don't get bored by this, but I'm actually coming back and doing something a bit different this year. So if you came in 2015, you saw me demo my guitar. I came back in 2016 with the entire band, and we did a performance, and that was a lot of fun. But I'm here on behalf of Seymour Duncan to sort of go over my live rig, go over all the components that comprise my live rig, what I take on tour with Periphery, and break those down for you guys. So element by element. And at the nexus of that is the Fractal Audio Axe Effects and the Seymour Duncan Power Stage 700. So I'll delve into that. Besides that, I was just going to take a couple questions as I typically do while I go along, and last but not least, play some songs for you guys. Does that sound good to you? Awesome. It's going to be loud, by the way, so I hope that doesn't offend anybody at 12:30 in the afternoon. I'm not used to being this loud at 12:30 in the afternoon, you know? I'm a musician, so typically I'm waking up 15 minutes before now. So yeah. Before I get into the specifics of things, I'll just explain what I use. And what I'm using right now is the closest resemblance to what I have live, with the exception of one or two things. So I'll get into that. First and foremost, this is my PRS Signature SE model. This is the 2018 version of it. If you don't know anything about it, Google is a thing. No, 25.5-inch scaling, 20-inch fretboard radius, and it's the most proud I've been of any guitar I've ever spec'd out ever in the history of me speccing out guitars, which is not a long history, but I couldn't be more proud of it, and they knocked it out of the park. One of the biggest reasons I feel like it's done so well with what I do in Periphery is the pickups. Is Seymour Duncan and what they were able to do with the signature pickup set that we developed. This is the Seymour Duncan Alpha and Omega set, and it's pretty much changed the way I play. Who here buys a lot of gear on a regular basis? All right, so I'm that way as well. But I feel like there's a major distinction between myself and a lot of people who call themselves gear addicts. I've never been a materialistic person, per se. So I've never been the guy to go out and buy a Les Paul, to go out and buy a Tele, to go out and buy a Strat just because I want to look at it in my house. All the gear that I buy and all the gear that I hoard has to have a very specific purpose. And for years, I've been playing guitar for about 18 years now, and most of that 18 years was spent trying to find what's the best bridge pickup that pairs best with this neck pickup? What neck pickup can I get to match this bridge pickup? It was a constant chase, a constant search for tone. And when it came time to sit down with Seymour Duncan to develop a pickup set, it felt like a million-pound weight off my shoulders when we were able to develop a set that really covered everything I needed with Periphery. And that being, well, first and foremost, what I call the Caveman Tone. It needed to have this just really pissed off, can I say pissed off? Right? Okay, pissed off tone. Ticked off. This. So that's the meat and potatoes of the bridge pickup. But I'm doing something very specific there. If you couldn't tell, I'm playing a lot of sort of low register kind of riffs. I'm trying to get that, for lack of a better word, I guess Meshuggah-y kind of, I'm not going to say gent. I just said it. But that's kind of what I'm looking for, this really primitive, I call it an ignorant sound, you know? Just unintelligent. But the main difference with this bridge pickup was that I wanted the ability to nail this without changing pickup configurations, without changing my tone, without changing anything in my signal chain, was to be able to play stuff like this. How you can hear notes in there, right? It doesn't sound like a bunch, at least to my ears, it doesn't sound like a bunch of just garbled mess of noise when you tend to put this much gain into your tone. And for Periphery, and for heavy metal in general, the idea is to inject it with just way too much gain. So you want to be able to harness that and control it. The key word is controlling that gain. And this, I'll get more into that in a second when I break down the power stage. But the ability was to be able to get this, get the Cannibal Corpse, you know, and then be able to get this. And I feel like we hit a home run with the bridge pickup. Now with the neck, I wanted something very specific. And check this out. I dialed in some tones just for today. So right now you're listening to my main rhythm tone. I'll use that kind of tone with Periphery. Not this exact one, but something kind of based off of it. This is my clean tone. It's pretty naked on the bridge pickup. It's a pretty stripped down tone. There's a compressor on it. There's no delay. There's no reverb. It's just really straightforward, bare bones, clean tone. But I showed you that tone so I can sort of show you what kind of versatility we went for in the neck pickup. I wanted this fat, sort of glassy. But I don't know how many of you guys are sort of metal or rock-oriented players. I am, obviously, and I've seen a lot of other players choke way up on their pick. There's no way you guys are seeing this right now, what I'm doing with my right hand, but there's barely any pick sticking out. So I'm using a .66 millimeter Dunlop, and I have just a tiny bit sticking out. So when I'm playing, when I'm going full on my rhythm tone, I'm choking way up on the pick. So what happens is when you switch to a traditional neck pickup, you tend to lose a lot of note definition, or sorry, pick attack, when you switch to a bridge pickup on a clean tone. With this, I wanted you to be able to get a lot of pick attack if you chose to choke up on your pick. So this is what it's like holding your pick normally. But if you choke up, all of a sudden you get a lot more attack. So you hear the difference there? There's a lot more snappiness. There's a lot more direct attack when you're picking. And it's all because you're just changing the way you hold a pick. Which for me, the less sort of fussing around you have to do with your guitars, with your pickup configuration, the better. If you can make a change just by holding your pick a different way, that to me accomplishes what gear is meant to accomplish, in my opinion. So any questions so far about the pickups that I'm playing? You can just yell it out, I don't care. Okay, it's still early. You're still having your coffee, it's all good. So that's the pickups. Now, what's at the center of my rig up here is a modeler that I have called the Fractal Audio Axe FX 2. And I pair the Fractal with the Power Stage 700. Now, the Power Stage 700 powers my cab typically. It's pretty small up here. It always surprises people that this is my entire rig. And the beauty of this rig is that it fits in a carry-on bag when you fly a plane. So you don't have to trust the TSA to throw around your gear, and hopefully it survives when you arrive to your destination. The beautiful aspect of my rig is its portability. And again, sort of going back to what I hinted at earlier, it's control. Now check it out. Who here plays in a live band? Who here plays live music on a regular basis? That's a damn lot of you. All right. So you guys know that effect when you show up to a new stage, it sounds different than the last one you played? And the next stage you go on and you're like, wow, this sounds so different than what I dialed in at home. Or then you show up and there's wooden walls, there's a wooden roof, or you show up to another venue and there's a bunch of metal everywhere, so the sound is reflecting back at you. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. And whether you use amps, whether you use the Fractal Audio Axe Effects, whether you use the Kemper or any other type of modeler or whatever kind of amp, you're always going to have to fight that battle. You're going to have to fight a room if a room has awkward dimensions, if there's a lot of sort of unfriendly material in the venue sound-wise, it's going to change your tone. And the reason I mentioned control is because with metal, it's all about taking that high gain and harnessing it in a way that just doesn't sound like chaos, especially when you have 3 guitar players in your band, like my band does for some reason. And it's at the forefront of a conversation when we pull into a venue and we have to sculpt our sound. So the beautiful part about the Power Stage 700 is that I have the ability to tweak my tone on the fly. So right now I'm writing my preamp on the Power Stage with everything at about noon. So this is what this sounds like. But if I show up to a venue and I notice my sound on stage sounds a little woofy, sounds a little too bottom heavy, and I want to take some of that out, previously I had to open up my modeler and surf through a ton of little menus and then tweak it from there, and it was the hugest vibe killer ever during a set. I'd literally have to stop playing, get on my knees and kneel down in front of my modeler, and then tweak through a bunch of menu like I'm Steve Jobs up there while there's a metal show happening. And it was not fun. And when Seymour Duncan told me they were working on this, it was almost like this serendipitous moment. Like I was like, oh my God, this is going to save my life live. Because instead of having to go through my menus to take some bass out of my tone, check it out. Now I can just do this. One other fight I'm always fighting is the battle of mids. Our sound guy is always telling me, you guys are scooping your tones too much. I know it sounds great when you're jamming in a room, but you want mids to be able to cut through in a live context. So I'm always making these kinds of adjustments. You guys hear how pronounced some of those differences are when I'm tweaking the tone? That's something that really was one of the main features of the Power Stage that I knew I had to have it as part of my live rig when they developed it. And that's my rig. I can fly with it. I'm using a pedal board today, and that's literally it. So if we have questions along the way about my rig, yeah, I can take yours. This gentleman up here in the front asks why I'm not using the new Axe Effects. Because I don't have it yet. No, I'm such a creature of habit, man. Like, I've had the same Axe Effects for a couple years now, and I have my patches dialed in exactly the way I want them. And I keep doing this show of hands, but I'm really genuinely curious. How many guys use modelers at home, be it the Kemper or the Fractal? Right on. So that's a pretty good number of you. I remember that number of hands was probably half of that last time I was here, which shows you something about the way our music industry is trending. More people are using modelers instead of amps in a live context. And again, I cannot stress to you how important it is to have a piece of gear like the Power Stage to carry over a couple things. The first being what I just explained, having that tweakability on the fly. But second, and I feel like this is overlooked a lot when guitar players are looking for something to power their cabs with their modelers, is they're not looking for the transparency, something that carries over their tone as clearly as possible. It captures the spirit. Like, you don't want to have a rhythm tone that all of a sudden you put it into some power amp that's not designed for guitar at all, and it can neuter the tone. It can filter it in a way that sounds really unappealing. And the beauty of this Power Stage is it's made for a guitar player. So if you dial in a really cool telly tone or a strat tone or a metal tone, it'll have all that intact. It'll keep the algorithms completely unfiltered in whatever tone you've built, and that's not the bottom line, right? I should say that is the bottom line. That's why you spend hours tweaking your guitar tone at home in your bedroom. You don't do that much tweaking so you can show up to a venue and have it sound like a completely different tone, if that makes any sense. So, again, there's many beautiful things about it. I'll go into detail in a little bit about that. But who wants to hear a song? Yeah. You guys are like, please stop talking and just play guitar. You're not a keynote speaker. Just play your damn instrument. All right. I'm in drop C. I'm going to get in a tuning I call drop A, where I just tune the sixth string down all the way to A, an additional step and a half. So this is what this sounds like. How ignorant does that sound? That riff sounds like it's about to break into your car. All right. And what you're hearing, there's not many components to it. It's a really simple fractal patch through the Power Stage, through this cab. That's it. All right. I'm going to play a song called Prayer Position. Thank you. All right. Any questions? Anybody want to yell out a question at me? Yeah. So he's asking, why do I want a power amp over an actual amplifier? Honestly, I find that this approach tends to keep more of the tone that I spec out on my Axe effects intact. It has the most sort of transparency, in my opinion, using something like this, like a power amp, as opposed to running the Axe effects in an effects loop of an amplifier. Does that make sense? I find that, again, I spend hours, literally hours, before a tour, dialing in every tone I need for a Periphery set. Now, for those of you who have seen us live before, if you've watched a Periphery set, typically we'll play 60, 65, 70 minutes. In that span, I'm changing tones in my Fractal. I'm probably using 40 or 50 different presets. Different rhythm tones for different purposes, different gain settings for certain riffs. And again, the same for clean tones and mid-gain tones. So there's a lot of information that's changing on the fly during a given Periphery set. So if I'm taking hours and hours to spec out these tones to be exactly the way I want them for a Periphery set, they have to sound the closest they can possibly be in a live setting. And I found that while shooting this against other sort of amplifiers, because I've tried a bunch of setups over the years, this setup has always sort of made the most sense from that angle, and that it keeps everything intact from how I was developing in my studio, in my bedroom, or wherever. So that's bottom line for me right there. It needs to be exactly what I had in mind. Otherwise, I'm just not going to use it, Can I get to another question? I saw some more hands go up earlier. Anybody? Yeah. Sorry? He's asking when I'm going to upload these presets for public consumption, and the answer is never. No, I don't have any. I don't have any hang-ups about being the secret sauce guy. I have to be honest. I dial in what I need to use for myself without really knowing if the rest of the world will like it. It's completely utilitarian. And I dial in tones for exactly what I need to use them for, and that's it. So I don't even know if what I use is applicable in other circumstances beside Periphery. It isn't until I get to trade shows like these and conventions like these where I start to show people my tones, and they're like, wow, what are you using? And then I get a thought in my head. I'm like, wow, people actually like what I use. Okay, cool. Maybe I will share my settings. That's the beautiful thing about Periphery and what we do, because when we started doing this, 2010, 2011, when we started touring on a larger level, I didn't know if anyone would care. In our first tour, you guys should have seen some of the crowds that came to our first tour. Man, Boise, Idaho, 8 people, maybe 8.5. I think there was a baby in there somewhere. But again, it's like moments like that where you're like, okay, I'm incredibly humbled right now, because nobody ever knew if anybody would care, if Periphery would ever catch on, or if they would get what we were trying to do with tone, with our instruments. And I look out now, and 95% of Periphery fans, I swear, are gearheads. They care about what scale length you have on your guitar. They care about, I read that book, The Dirt, that Motley Crue book. Has anybody read The Dirt? It's the book that Motley Crue guys wrote about the 80s, about their period of excess. And there's all these crazy stories. I can't say the stories now because there's children in the audience. I'm literally looking at some children here. But they would tell me about their, the book told me so much about their fan base. And our fan base is not that. No girls are coming and chasing us after our set. It's dudes who want to know about string gauges. And, dude, what thickness picks do you use? Or like, dude, I couldn't help but notice you switched from 11s to 10s on that song. I'm like, what? So again, I'm making fun of it. I'm belittling it, but I'm doing that because I love it. It's evident that Periphery fans and people who remotely care about what I do, they're right there. They're on the same page. So when I talk about tone, now I have a new hope that, hopefully you guys share some of those same commonalities with me, that we care about how to harness gain in a metal context, how we need to utilize very few components but do it in the most effective way possible. Does that make sense? Yeah, I see a hand up over there. Yeah. Yeah, so he's asking me about high gain tone, how to achieve one that I suppose is tasteful, right? That doesn't sound like a bunch of bricks falling off a building. And trust me, man, to get a high gain tone that works in a band context, that's a never-ending battle. Especially when you have 5 people in your band, 3 of which are guitar players who play with even more gain than you do. So for me, and again, I keep going back to the word control. And the very nature of this tone is completely out of control. There's way too much gain on it. And, any fan of vintage music, you listen to Deep Purple, you listen to Black Sabbath, you listen to anything coming from the 70s, and what they're doing with gain, people back then thought that was pushing the envelope with how much gain you could inject into a tone and have it still be musical. Well, you take a look 40 years later, and it's not what it meant to, it's not what it was meant to be back then. This is very unnatural, the amount of tone I put into my tone. The only way to make it sound musical is to spend time working on the components in your rig. Like, here's rule number 1, for instance. If you want a good metal tone, don't go buy $70 pickups and expect them to sound like Eddie Van Halen, or expect them to sound like James Hetfield, or Dimebag Darrell, or Periphery, or Animals as Leaders, or Tesseract, or whatever. Pickups are where it starts, especially with metal, man, especially with metal. I'm not going to name any other brand names, but I went through pickups at such a rapid rate when I was learning guitar that I became pretty demoralized searching for that tone. So it starts with the pickups. Of course, every guitar is going to sound different, but I'd say the place where most people mess up is in dialing in their rig, be it on a modeler or using an amp. I see people inject too many components into their tone. They're trying to stack reverb on their rhythm tone, or they're trying to compress it too much, or the noise gate is too tight. There's so few elements into my rhythm tone right now. It's compressed a little bit, there's a noise gate on it, but all that's in a modeler on these settings is just, it's a high gain amp with a tube screamer in front of it, and that's it. That's it. And it's just using your ears. And I always go by the Van Halen rule. The Van Halen rule is where you play the riff from Unchained, and if it sounds good, then that's your tone. This is the greatest riff ever written. disagree, you're just wrong. But I say that riff because those chugs, like when you sculpt a high gain tone, and that really, it's like ignorant. I love that word. It's like spongy, you know? That's another term I like to use. It's just wide and spongy. But you also want to have these notes. So the minute you lose one or the other, you're already failing at a high gain tone. You want to be able to have those elements intact. And for me, it's pickups and it's the elements in your signal chain. That's where I see the most common mistakes. Yeah, I'll take one more question before I get to the next song. You're going to have to really yell from back there. Yeah. That's a good question. So this gentleman just asked, with 3 guitar players, how are we configured in terms of an audio spectrum when we're playing live? And that's a very simple answer for you. I'm panned all the way to that side, stage right, so you're left. Misha is panned all the way to the other side. And then Jake is panned right down the middle. So you get a little bit of both of him on both sides. So yeah, it's pretty simple. We've experimented with changing it up before, but it always just sounds a lot clearer that way. And just makes the most sense if you have 3 guitar players. Why we have 3 guitar players, that's a different story. No, but the short answer to that is just there's a lot going on in the music, so you kind of need 3 guitar players. Just ask Iron Maiden. They're the prime examples of having too many notes happening, so you need to delegate 3 guitar players to play them. That's always been Periphery's kind of aesthetic as a band. Can I play another song for you guys? Awesome. Now I just want to play Unchained like the whole song. Should I really do it? But then anybody below the age of 30 is just going to walk out of here. They'll be like, who's Van Housen? Who's that? Oh, that riff, so good. Okay. All right, so we have like a 12-minute song called Omega, and I'm going to play maybe half of it because I don't want to see people fall asleep out there. guys ever find yourself inspired by a certain guitar or inspired by a certain amp, where you pick up something and you're like, wow, I just wrote something on this piece of gear, so that means it must speak to me in some way. I can't tell you how many times that's happened to me over the course of my life, really. And there's a bunch of sections in that song that were completely inspired by pieces of gear. And remember, there's this dissonant bit, these really messed up chords. Sounds like a panic attack. You know that feeling right before you have a panic attack? But that bit was inspired by two things. It was inspired by a really sort of clear tone on your bridge pickup, combined with this pretty interesting preset that I dialed in on the Fractal. So I don't know if you guys hear this. Do you hear there's an octaver effect on the modeler? It's a high octave. It's really subtle. And that's why this stuff is so refreshing, is because if you're a creative person, if you're a songwriter, whether you just write riffs, or you're a bedroom producer, or you're in a garage band, or you're in a cover band that writes originals sometimes, having gear that inspires you, I will say this till the day I die, having gear that inspires you is the ultimate safety net. Because do you guys go through ruts ever? Do you guys ever feel like you can't write anything ever because you hit a wall? I feel that every other day, basically. I have this existential crisis to myself. I'm like, oh my God, I think I just wrote my last good riff. What am I going to do? It happens to me all the time. And the most important thing I found out is, first of all, don't panic, you idiot. Because I think it's a distinctly human thing to feel that, to feel like your best work is behind you. But I will tell you, to know you have this safety net of this guitar that inspires you. It's a PRS that every time I pick up, I want to write riffs. I want to write metal riffs. But then to have, a Tele that I pick up if I want to write something bluesy, to have a really inspiring amp setup with a pedal board, where every time I plug it in, I just want to write. I just want to be creative. Having that as a safety net is invaluable, and I feel like, maybe one of you can yell this out if I'm wrong, that's the ultimate point of having a gear obsession. Being I don't want to say trust fund kid or something. I knew a lot of kids growing up who would just buy gear to have it, and they would never play it. But to me, that defeats the purpose of why we do this, of why Sweetwater is such an awesome thing, because you can surround yourself with gear that inspires you. So, anyways, that's my rant on that. I can take one more question, and then I'm going to play another song. Yeah, I'll get to you right there. What do I think about Misha's Tele? It's cool. My badge does not say Fender on it. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's an awesome guitar, and again, it's one of those very specific kinds of guitars. So It's funny, I was just talking with Misha, my bandmate, about this the other day. It's like, we've built our perfect guitars. He has his own favorite guitar, and seriously, man, I don't want to sound like I'm blowing myself up here, but we developed my favorite guitar. So in terms of finding other flavors and searching for other guitars that accomplish what this does, I don't need that. If there were ever an instance where I pick up a different instrument, it's to get this distinctly out there flavor, like a Tele, like a Strat, something that doesn't sound like this. I can get close. I can do some kinds of sort of Tele, Strat-like things on this. I can get close. And again, this is the reason why I'm so proud of this guitar. No, but to stop dodging your question, I really like that guitar. I do. Screw it, I'll take one more. Yeah. Sorry, just speak up a little bit. Oh, yeah, he's asking about the new Axe FX 3, which I played before, and it's really awesome. But again, I'm such a creature of habit. I'm lame like that. The minute I find something that I like, that's what I go to. So, yeah, I have not played it yet, or I have not bought one yet, but I've played it, and it's killer from what I've heard. Can I play another song, all right? Is that cool? All right. So since I've got this tone, 3 years ago, PRS sent me a prototype for this guitar. I was on vacation in Spain. It was my honeymoon, and they sent me the best honeymoon gift ever. It was this guitar in a box, showed up to our place in Spain, and I was floored, seeing it for the first time. And the minute I knew it was a home run was I picked up the guitar, I plugged it into my rig there, my little travel rig, and I immediately put it in this setting, where this was one of the main settings we developed with the guitar. This coil split position, where you just engage the push-pull knob, middle pickup position, and you get this really inspiring. And I immediately wrote something on it. And this is the riff that I wrote on it. That was written in 5 minutes. I was just messing with a couple chord progressions that sounded really good in this pickup configuration. So I had to write. And it wasn't like a chore. Sometimes when you sit down and write a song, it's like a chore. This is the exact opposite. And again, it kind of harkens back to what I was just talking about. It's gear that, whether you like it or not, it forces inspiration out of you. And then, within an hour, I had written that first section of the song, and then this. Dude. Thank you. But again, that stuff was forced out of me by the elements that I've chosen to incorporate into my rig. So when people say, oh, it's only gear, it's only gear. Eddie Van Halen can sound good through anything, which is true. But everybody has their own mechanism to pull inspiration out of them. And I say pull it out of you because sometimes it doesn't necessarily feel like a choice when you write something, you know? And that's what you're looking for. Writing a song shouldn't feel like it's work. If it's a really good idea, it's kind of going to flow out of you like, you know, I won't go there. But that's what it should be like. And again, that's the beauty of gear. So, Gear Fest, all the way. This is my last song for you guys. Yeah, Gear Fest. Hey, can we give a round of applause for Sweetwater for doing this? Yeah. This is so much fun. And to know that you guys have a whole day ahead of you, you guys are going to have a good time. Speaking of which, if you're not leaving immediately, I'm going to be at the Duncan tent, which is tent number 5. Pretty much all day, I'm going to be the creepy guy in the corner just hanging around with no purpose. So if you want to come chat, if you want to come hang, I realize you guys may have more questions to ask. Come over and say hi. We can talk pickups. We can talk PRS. We can talk Seymour Duncan, whatever you guys want. We can talk about hair products. We can talk about shoes, whatever you guys want to chat about. Don't be a stranger, all right? This song is called The Way the News Goes. I'll go ahead and just play the song for you guys. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Sweetwater. Thank you, Seymour Duncan. Thank all of you. Come say hi later.